That Tuesday started with a broken zipper. Not a metaphor, an actual broken zipper on my jacket, the good one I wore to client meetings, the one I had owned for 4 years and taken through 2 Canadian winters without a single problem. The zipper came apart that morning at 7:40 while I was standing in my kitchen, trying to leave for work. And I stood there holding 2 useless halves of fabric for probably longer than the situation deserved. I left it on the chair, grabbed my older coat from the closet, missed the 8:02 Yonge train by about 12 seconds. By the time I got to my usual spot, Timothy's on King, it had a handwritten note taped to the inside of the glass. Burst pipe, closed until further notice. The staff had clearly not expected to write those words when they woke up that morning either, because the note had a small apology at the bottom that seemed almost personal. I checked the time on my phone. I had 20 minutes before I needed to be at the office. I started walking. There is a place on Adelaide I had walked past maybe 30 times without going in. Ledger Coffee. It sat between a dry cleaner and a printing shop, the kind of spot that does not advertise itself, that relies entirely on the people who already know it exists. The window was steamed lightly from the cold outside. Inside, warm light, dark wood, about a dozen people, most of them alone with laptops or books. I got in line and checked my email without thinking about it. Then the feeling hit me. That specific prickle at the back of your neck when someone nearby is paying attention to you. I looked up. She was 2 spots ahead in the line. Dark coat, brown hair, tied back loosely, one hand in her pocket, and the other holding her phone face down against her leg. She was already looking at me when I found her. Not a glance. Not that half-second thing people do when they accidentally make eye contact and immediately look somewhere safer. She looked at me, the way you look at something you have already decided to think about later. Most people look away. This one did not. The line moved. She reached the counter. I heard her order without meaning to listen. Medium dark roast, black, no room. When it was my turn, I asked for the same, and then, for a reason I would not have been able to explain to anyone, I said, "And the dark roast for her too." The woman at the register nodded toward the pickup end of the counter. "The black coffee?" "Yeah." I paid. I stepped aside. I immediately understood that I had done something slightly out of character, and that there was no good way to walk it back. She was waiting at the end of the counter when her name was called. The barista slid the cup across and nodded toward me. She looked at the cup. She looked at me. "You didn't have to do that," she said. Her voice was even. Not warm, not cold, just level. "I know. So why did you?" I thought for a second. "You looked like you'd already decided whether or not the morning was going to be worth it." She looked at me for a moment with an expression I could not read. "That's a strange reason to buy someone coffee." It was a strange impulse. Did it work out the way you expected? I didn't have expectations. That was kind of the point. Something in her face shifted. Not a smile exactly. More like a door that had been closed, deciding it did not need to be locked. "Thank you," she said. She picked up the cup, turned, and walked to a small table near the back, where she set her phone down, opened a thin notebook, and began writing without looking up again. I took my coffee and left. I made it halfway down Adelaide before I realized I had not caught her name, or said mine, or done anything remotely useful. I also realized I felt oddly awake in a way that had nothing to do with the coffee, which I had not even had a chance to drink yet. I went back the next morning. Not to Ledger specifically, I told myself. I just wanted to see if the spot was worth adding to my regular rotations. The coffee had been good. The space was quiet. These were legitimate reasons. She was not there. I went Thursday. She was not there either. Friday I ordered my coffee, sat at the small counter along the wall, answered 3 emails, and left feeling faintly ridiculous without fully understanding why. Saturday I almost slept in. It was raining, the kind of slow gray drizzle that makes Toronto in November look like it is trying to discourage you from going outside. I went anyway. She was there. Same table at the back. Same dark coffee. Notebook open in front of her. Pen moving. She looked up before I was halfway through the door. Which was strange because I had not made any noise coming in. I ordered. I considered my options while the barista worked. I was aware that walking over to a woman's table uninvited in a coffee shop was a thing with a specific social category, and that I did not want to be in that category. I was also aware that I had come back to this specific coffee shop 4 times in 5 days. I walked over. She watched me approach. She did not close the notebook. "This is going to sound like a line," I said. She tilted her head slightly. "Is it?" "Probably. I don't usually walk up to people in coffee shops. But you bought a stranger's coffee this week. That was different." "Was it?" I did not have a clean answer to that. She seemed to notice. "Sit down," she said. She closed the notebook, not putting it away, just closing it, like she was pausing a thought, not ending it. "Let's see what you actually wanted to say." I sat. I wrapped my hands around my cup. Outside the rain had thickened slightly. The coffee shop was warm and unhurried in the way Saturday mornings can be when you are not trying to get somewhere. "You came back on Thursday," she said. I stopped with my cup halfway up. "Sorry? And Wednesday." She looked at me steadily. "I wasn't here either day, but I noticed you'd been in. The barista mentioned it." "She mentioned me specifically?" "You order the same thing, and you always sit at the counter by the window. You're apparently memorable. That's either good or embarrassing." "Probably both." She picked up her coffee. "So, what did you actually come back for?" I thought about lying. I also thought about being clever. Neither seemed worth it. "I don't know," I said. I guess." She did not look surprised or flattered. She looked like she was filing the information somewhere accurate. "My name is Blair," she said finally. "I'm Nathan." She repeated my name once, quietly, like she was testing its weight. Then she asked what I did, in that direct way some people have, where the question is actually just an opening move. I told her I worked in urban planning, that I spent most of my days in rooms where people argued about density requirements and transit corridors, and whether a particular stretch of Eglinton was going to turn into something useful before we were both too old to care. "Do you like it?" she asked. "Usually." I paused. "Less recently." "What changed recently?" That was a sharper question than I expected for a first conversation. I answered it honestly, because something about the way she asked made dishonesty feel like a waste of both our time. I told her I had been in the same role for 3 years, that I was good at it, that my manager had told me twice, in the last 12 months, that I was on track for something senior, and that none of that had made the work feel like mine anymore. Blair listened without interrupting. Not the polite kind of listening, where you can see the person waiting for their turn. The actual kind. "What would make it feel like yours? Again?" she asked. "I don't know yet. That's an honest answer. You seem like someone who'd notice if it wasn't." She looked at me. "I do notice that." She said it without apology. She told me she ran a financial planning practice on Bay Street. She had built it herself over 6 years, taken on 2 junior advisors in the last 18 months, and was currently navigating a situation where one of those advisors was talented and unreliable in exactly the wrong combination. She said all of this plainly, without performing the difficulty or the achievement, just the facts and the weight they carried. "That sounds exhausting," I said. "It is. But it's mine." She said it the same way you'd say a thing that cost you enough to mean something. After that first Saturday, we stopped pretending it was accidental. I arrived at Ledger around 8:30 most mornings. Blair was almost always already there, notebook in front of her, coffee cooling slightly at her elbow. The first few times she kept working when I sat down. One morning she closed the notebook before I had even pulled out the chair. I noticed. She noticed me noticing. "Don't read into it," she said. I wasn't going to say anything. Your face was. The mornings built up the way things do when you stop trying to make them significant, and just let them be what they are. She remembered things I had said in passing. An afternoon meeting I had dreaded, a neighborhood proposal I'd spent 2 weeks on that got shelved in at committee, the fact that I liked hockey, but had stopped watching it the year after my dad died. Because it felt too much like something we used to do together, and I hadn't quite figured out how to do it alone yet. I did not plan to tell her that last part. It came out during a conversation about something unrelated, and she did not make a face about it, or say she was sorry in that automatic way people do. She just said, "How long ago?" 3 years. She nodded. It takes longer than people think it should. There was something in the way she said it that made me think she was not speaking generally. I learned things too. She kept 3 separate notebooks, each for a different kind of thinking. She did not answer unknown numbers, and had a strict policy about checking her phone during meals that she applied to herself more rigidly than to anyone else. She had a younger brother. In Winnipeg, she called every Sunday evening. She ran along the waterfront when the weather allowed it, and did not enjoy running but liked the hour of thinking it gave her. One Wednesday she came in later than usual. Her hair was damp, and she had the look of someone who had already had a harder morning than they were willing to detail. "Bad start?" I asked. "Client situation." She sat down and kept her coat on for a minute. "Someone who's been with me since year 1. He made a decision outside of my advice, and now it's gone sideways and he's angry about it in the direction of me. That's not fair. No, but it's real, and I still have to deal with it." "What are you going to do? Sit here for 12 more minutes and drink this coffee, then go deal with it?" She looked at me. "What would you do? In your position? In any position? What do you do when someone else's choice becomes your problem to manage?" I thought about it. "I usually take the long way to wherever I have to be. Walking helps me organize what I actually want to say versus what I think I'm supposed to say." She looked at me for a second. "That's more useful than most of what people say to me." "People usually say something helpful?" "People usually say something." There was an industry event the following Friday, a planning and development networking night at a venue in Liberty Village, the kind of evening with good catering and conversations that sound important without necessarily being so. I mentioned it to Blair without thinking. "Come with me," I said. She looked up from her notebook. "That's your industry." "Not mine, I know. But you know how to talk to people, and I know how to be in a room where everybody is quietly auditioning for something. Between us we'd probably survive it." She considered this. "Would this be the part where you say it like it's casual and wait to see if I agree?" I was hoping to say it like it's casual and have you agree without examining the mechanics. The corner of her mouth moved. "Wear something you're comfortable in," she said. "I don't like events where people are uncomfortable." That Friday, she met me outside the venue. Dark green coat over something simple and sharp. And she moved through the room the way she did everything else, with enough intention that she never looked like she was working at it. We did not arrive as a unit, and we did not stay attached, but we kept finding each other. A guy who had cornered me near the bar, talking about a transit proposal he was involved in, and looking for more agreement than the facts warranted, got interrupted when Blair appeared beside me with a question about something entirely unrelated. He lost his thread. I excused myself. 20 minutes later, I found her near the windows, being talked at by someone who was explaining, loudly, what the real problem with Canadian housing was, as though she had spent 6 years advising people on their financial lives, and had somehow missed this information. I stepped in and redirected the conversation toward the man's own project, and let him follow his own voice somewhere else. "You owe me," she said quietly, when we were clear. "You owe me from 20 minutes ago." "Fair. We're even." We stood near the window for a while. After that, The city spread out beyond the glass. People moving through the party around us. Blair had a drink in her hand and was watching the room with that particular look of hers, reading something in it that I could not quite see. "You're better at this than you said," I told her. "I said I didn't like events. Not that I was bad at them. That's a meaningful distinction. Most distinctions are." She turned slightly toward me. "You're better at this than you let on to. I've been doing this for 3 years. You learn to navigate." "That's not what I mean." She looked at me directly. "You're good at noticing when someone needs something, not in a calculated way, just genuinely." I did not know what to say to that. I looked out at the city for a moment. "Blair," I said. "Don't," she said quietly. "I wasn't going to say anything complicated." "I know. But still." She looked at me for a long second. Something passed across her face. Something I could not have named precisely. "We should get out of here," she said. We took a cab east. The city moved past the windows in the way it does at night. All amber light and quick glimpses of other people's evenings. Our knees touched when the cab turned onto King and neither of us moved. Outside her building on Sherborne, the rain had left the sidewalk shining. She held her keys in her hand and looked at me with an expression that was not a question. "Do you want to come up?" she asked. "Yes," I said. She unlocked the door. I followed her inside. And it did not feel sudden. It felt like all those mornings had been building toward a place where this was the obvious next thing. The next morning was simpler than I expected it to be. Gray light. Through tall windows. The sound of the city already moving. Blair was in the kitchen when I came out, in an oversized gray sweatshirt, making coffee in a French press. With the focused attention she gave to everything, she did not make a production of the morning. "There's a mug on the second shelf," she said without looking up. "I found it." She poured. We stood at her kitchen counter for a while, talking about nothing important. The bad speech that someone had given at the event. A Toronto winter that had come 3 weeks earlier than anyone wanted. A road closure on Adelaide that had apparently been ongoing for 8 months, with no explanation offered to anyone. At some point Blair laughed. A real one, the kind that surprised her slightly. She put her hand over her mouth after, not from embarrassment, I thought, but from the unexpectedness of it. When I was getting my coat she walked me to the door. "Same time Monday," she said. I looked at her. "At Ledger," she said. "Yeah," I said. "Same time Monday." Monday I was there at 8:20. Her table was empty. I ordered my coffee and sat at the counter by the window and told myself she was running late. I answered emails. I watched the door. 8:40, 8:50, 9. She did not come. Tuesday was the same. Wednesday, I went to my old coffee shop on King. Ordered my regular, sat at a stool by the window, and felt the specific flatness of a morning that did not have anything to look forward to in it. On Thursday I went back to Ledger anyway, stood in line, ordered my dark roast, and sat at the counter where I could see both the door and her table. Her table stayed empty. I went over the last morning in my head more than I probably should have. I could not find the thing I had done wrong. I had not pushed. I had not said anything I did not mean. Blair had been the one to say same time Monday, and she had said it simply, without the kind of layered meaning you add to things when you are not sure about them. But she was not there. On Friday afternoon my phone buzzed. No name in the preview. I opened it, and it was Blair. No greeting, just an address in Leslieville and a time. Saturday, 11. I stared at the message for a while. Then I wrote back, "Okay." The place she had picked was a small restaurant with a long counter and a blackboard menu. The kind of East End Toronto spot that does not have a website and doesn't need one. Blair was already at a corner table when I arrived, both hands around a mug. She looked up when I came in. Her posture was contained, but something underneath it wasn't. "Hi," she said. "Hi." I sat across from her. The silence between us was not comfortable the way our silences usually were. It had an edge to it. "I handled this badly," she said. I had been ready for an explanation. An excuse, maybe. Something clean and portable. That was not what I expected. You said same time Monday, I said. I know. And then you were gone. I know that too. The coffee came. We ordered food without looking at the menus very carefully. When the server left, Blair set both hands flat on the table. I am used to my life going the way I've arranged it, she said. My work, my calendar, the people I let close. There's a structure I've built and I know where everything fits. And I didn't fit. You didn't not fit. She looked at me directly. That was the problem. I waited. My last relationship lasted 4 years, she said. I was good at maintaining it. I was consistent, I was present, I showed up. And when it ended, I realized I had been so focused on maintaining the shape of the thing that I hadn't noticed when the actual feeling left. She said it without drama, the way she said most things. But her fingers tightened slightly around the mug. After that, I decided not to let anything move fast enough to outpace my own understanding of it. And then Saturday night moved faster than I intended. She looked at me. So I slowed everything down, which I understand was unfair to you. It was, I know. I want you to actually hear that, I said. Not just as information you're filing somewhere. It was unfair and it made me question whether I had misread the entire thing. Something in her face tightened, but she did not look away. I hear it. I told her things too, more than I had planned. About work feeling hollow. About the proposal I had spent months on that got shelved without real explanation. And how I had sat in my apartment that evening, went to Mulper afterward, eating leftovers and watching something and not feeling much of anything, which had scared me more than the disappointment would have. About how somewhere in the last 3 years I had become very good at being fine and less sure about what I actually wanted. Blair listened. At one point she reached across the table and put her hand briefly over mine. Just for a moment, then she pulled it back. Like honesty had startled her a little. Outside on the Leslieville sidewalk, the morning had turned cold at walk, and clean. The kind of November day that almost makes it worth it. I was working out how to say something here, when Blair turned to me. Before you decide anything, she said, I have to tell you something else. My stomach moved. Okay. She took a breath that was not quite steady. The first morning at Ledger was not random. I looked at her. I knew who you were before you walked in, she said. Or I knew of you. There's a difference, but I'm not sure it matters. Basats. Explain. She looked at the street for a second, then back at me. I had a client who was exploring a real estate investment. Your firm's planning department was involved in an assessment of the same area. Your name came up in a document I was reviewing. I looked you up after. Your work, some public comments you'd made in a planning consultation, your LinkedIn. She paused. Your usual coffee shop announced the burst pipe on their Instagram the night before. The noise of the street seemed to lower. Ledger is the closest decent independent option in that direction, I said. Yes. So you were already there when I walked in. Yes, the table at the back where you could see the door. She did not answer that, which was its own answer. The look, I said, when I was in line. That part was genuine, she said quietly. I did not plan that. But the being there, yes, I positioned myself there. And the coffee. Not asking me to buy it, but not turning it down either. I was surprised that you did it. I genuinely was. I looked down the street. A streetcar moved past at the end of the block. That grinding sound it makes in cold weather. A woman with a stroller navigated around a crack in the sidewalk. Ordinary city things, continuing without any awareness of what was rearranging itself in my chest. Everything I had thought of as the beginning of something real now had a different set of wires behind it. I felt seen, I said. That first morning. I felt like something had happened that was not supposed to happen that day. It made me want to come back. I know, Blair said, and the whole time you already knew where to stand. Yes. Her voice had gone quieter. And then everything after it was real. That part I need you to believe even if you don't want to right now. She continued before I could respond. I did not expect to actually like the mornings. I expected to assess whether you were someone I could have a professional connection with. Instead, I started closing my notebook. I started looking at the door. I started noticing when you were tired or when something had gone badly that you hadn't mentioned. She stopped. I did not plan to want this. I planned to introduce myself to you in a controlled way and see what happened professionally. What happened instead was not controlled. I needed to walk. I told her that. She nodded. Okay. I'm not saying it's over. I'm saying I need a couple of days. You should have them, she said. She did not try to extend the conversation or add anything to pull me back. She just stood there on the sidewalk, straight and still, while I started down the street. I spent 2 days doing ordinary things with my head somewhere else entirely. I went to work. I sat in a meeting about Scarborough Transit connectivity and contributed 3 comments that were apparently well received. I made dinner both nights and ate it without tasting much. I ran along the lakeshore on Sunday morning, in cold air that made my lungs hurt in a way that was almost clarifying. I kept returning to Ledger in my mind. Not to the first morning I had thought I was replaying. The real one. She had known where I might go. She had chosen her table. She had made herself visible and then waited. The look across the coffee shop. The one that had made me feel like something electric had sparked into the space between 2 strangers, had not been accidental. It had been a position. That was the part I needed to sit with, but I also kept returning to other things. The way she listened. The way she had said my life costs something, and it's mine without any performance around it. The way she had laughed in her kitchen, and then seemed surprised by herself. The way she had stood on that Leslieville sidewalk and told me the truth about a thing she absolutely did not have to tell me. She could have said nothing. I would not have known. The fact that she said it at the moment, it could cost her. Everything was information too. Sunday afternoon I called her. She picked up on the second ring. She said my name in a way that was careful, and did not pretend otherwise. Are you at Ledger tomorrow morning? I asked. A pause. I can be 8:30, I said okay. When I arrived she was already there. Back table. No laptop, no notebook, no phone on the table, just Blair, sitting with both hands around her coffee, looking less arranged than I had ever seen her. I ordered. I walked over. She looked up at me without saying anything. You built the first morning, I said. I kept my voice even. You picked the table and you knew where to stand and you let me think the whole thing was something that had just happened. Yes. That hurt. Not because the beginning was calculated, because I felt something real in it, and finding out it was engineered made me go back and doubt everything I thought I had felt. She held my eyes. She did not correct me, or soften it, or explain. I know, she said. I'm sorry. I need you to actually be sorry. Not just know that you should be. I am, she said. I have been since about the 3rd morning in us when I understood that what I had started was going to be something I couldn't manage the way I managed things. I looked at her for a long moment. The rest of it, I said. The mornings, the event, the dinner, you telling me. All of it was real. I know, I said. That's the part I couldn't let go of. She reached into her coat pocket and set something on the table between us. A folded piece of paper. The kind you tear out of a notebook, folded carefully in half. I unfolded it, her handwriting, which I recognized from the notebooks she always had with her. 6 words. No plan. Just this. Just us. I looked at it for a moment. Then I folded it along its original crease and put it in my jacket pocket. We start from now, I said. No positioning. No deciding what I get to know, because it's more convenient that way. Yes. And if something feels like it's going too fast for you, you say that. You don't disappear. She looked at me steadily. I say it. Okay. I picked up my coffee. Outside the window, Adelaide was moving through its morning. Cyclists navigating the bike lane. A delivery van double-parked, with hazards on. A woman walking a dog who was deeply uninterested in the pace she wanted to keep. Just the city doing what it does. Blair was watching me with an expression that was quieter and more open than any I had seen on her. The door that had opened an inch that first morning was something else now. I could not tell yet exactly what. But I knew it was not closing. "Same time tomorrow?" I said. She picked up her coffee. "Same time tomorrow."